Hi, I'm Mal, and this is Miniature Warriors. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we'll see the start of our Waterloo campaign. It's a 4-day campaign run over 2 weekends, with about 10 players assuming the command roles in the campaign. It's a map-based campaign moving from area to area, and the map uses a unique cover system over the locations that allows hidden movement to be conducted in the campaign. The campaign movement was controlled by a black powder roll.
Most commanders within the campaign were a 8, with Napoleon being a 9 and Wellington also being a 9. March rates within the campaign were 2 primary road sections in a day, or a single secondary road marked on the campaign map by dashed road connectors per day. Troops could use an initiative action if they found themselves adjacent to a battle and would roll against their command rating, but this was modified by minuses if it was contrary to their day's orders. Weather was handled by a rule out of the Solo Gamer's Guide, and it was very, very effective. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the following campaign.
Cross the river. Tomorrow we'll dry our boots in Brussels.
God willing, sir.
God's got nothing to do with it.
At dawn on June 15, the French main army, under Napoleon's watchful eyes, marches for Charleroi. The 3rd Cavalry Corps, under General Kellerman, finding the main road choked with troops, swings off to the northwest. The Prussian 1st Corps, the coalition's forward garrison, receives reconnaissance reports of the French approach and decides to withdraw to Ligny, arriving after midnight. Wellington orders the German and Dutch cavalry supporting the Anglo-Dutch 2nd Corps forward to 8th. The 1st Corps, under the Prince of Orange, marches to Quatre Bras. The tired Prussian 1st Corps is reinforced by Prince Blucher ordering forward the 2nd Corps. The Prussian 3rd and 4th Corps close up on the rest of the Prussian army. Napoleon marches the Guard and the 3rd Corps forward to Ligny. Although the French arrive at Ligny late in the day, the Emperor orders his troops to drive the Prussians from the field. Napoleon deployed the 3rd Corps to the left and the Guard on the right. The infantry massed in columns. With light fading quickly, the French sent the Guard cavalry forward against the Prussian left. As the Guard light and lancers crashed into the Prussian cavalry, the Guard infantry forded the stream, supporting the open flank of the victorious Guard cavalry that had driven the enemy cavalry from the field, and threatening some Prussian infantry that had been driven into square. Further to the west, the 3rd Corps had demonstrated against the village of Ligny, holding the remaining Prussian forces in place. Just as the Emperor thought victory was within his grasp, darkness fell, and the field of battle fell silent. During the 16th, further to the west, the French 1st and 2nd Corps spent the day moving through Mons, reaching Arth by late afternoon. General Delaune immediately ordering the column to form line of battle. As at Ligny, the hour was already late, and the Anglo-Dutch forces held back, letting darkness bring a halt to the tentative skirmishing between the two armies. Just before dawn on the 17th, the French break camp in front of Ligny and withdraw to Charleroi. Wellington marches away from his Prussian allies and orders the Anglo-Dutch First Corps to Braine-le-Comte, where he arrives personally with Uxbridge's cavalry corps. The Coalition Reserve Corps leaves Antwerp and reaches Brussels. The Prussians suffer confusion and their 3rd and 4th Corps become entangled and spend the day between Namur and Huy. Off to the west, the French 3rd Cavalry Corps marches towards the sound of the guns and heads for Rath, where both the Anglo-Dutch and the French have renewed the engagement from the day before. General Delaune orders his troops forward, engaging the Anglo-Dutch on a wide front. Lord Hill, commanding the Anglo-Dutch Second Corps, has deployed his left flank behind a stream and formed the remainder of his troops to the right in 2 lines, with his British battalions in the front rank. The French infantry columns drove through the thin red line, as the French cavalry put flight to the Dutch cavalry on the British left. The guns fell silent a little after lunch and the broken coalition corps retreated to Nongon, leaving the enemy in possession of the field. The victorious French at Arth march back to Mons and turn eastwards onto the Brussels road. They finished their day's march in Soignes. Meanwhile Wellington marches for Waterloo in an attempt to link up with his Prussian allies. The British First Corps retraces its steps from the day before and reoccupies its billets of the previous night in Nivelles. To the south, Napoleon pushes the bulk of the L'Armée du Nord to Quatre Bras. As darkness falls, so does the rain. Light rain continued to fall early on June 19. The French Second Corps steps off on the Mons-Brussels road and when reaching Braine-le-Comte turns southeast for Nevels. The British First Corps is slow to break camp and step off on their day's march. Wellington has ordered them to Waterloo to concentrate with the rest of the Anglo-Dutch army. The First Corps, under the Prince of Orange, is forced to turn and fight. The French Second Corps, under General Ray, quickly deployed into line of battle. The Prince of Orange, keeping his Dutch and German troops in his second line, his force deployed astride the road to Waterloo. Ray pushes his cavalry to his left supported by artillery and infantry, a classic combined arms attack targeting a Dutch brigade posted there. Putting spurs to their mounts, the French hussars hurtle themselves towards the isolated Dutch infantry, who only just managed to form square. Seeing the square to their front, the hussars pulled up short and waited for the batteries to come up, which quickly made short work of the massed Dutch infantry. The right of the Anglo-Dutch position was now threatened, as the French looked to turn the extreme right of the British line. The Prince of Orange launched a timely assault by a Nassau unit exploiting a gap that had occurred between the French infantry and the French light cavalry, as well as extending the right of his line, with units from his second line. With casualties mounting and the steady Anglo-Dutch infantry showing no signs of withdrawing, General Ray withdrew, leaving the field to the Anglo-Dutch. Although a French loss, Napoleon would later commend General Ray for stopping the Prince of Orange from reinforcing Wellington at Waterloo. 3rd, 4th and the 4th Cavalry Corps, close up Quatre Bras and Ney commanding the army's advance guard, consisting of 6th Corps and the 2nd Cavalry Corps, dashes forward to Waterloo. As the rain of the morning clears, Ney approaches Waterloo and finds the ridge that the Brussels road climbs occupied by 3 corps of the Anglo-Dutch army, as General Hill's 2nd Corps had arrived from Hal. Being heavily outnumbered, Marshal Ney deployed the 6th Corps, the smallest in the army, on his left, his artillery in his centre and the 2nd Cavalry Corps on his right. The Duke of Wellington deployed the infantry of Hill's 2nd Corps along the ridge, and pushed 2 units forward to garrison Hougoumont and Le Haye-Saint. The Anglo-Dutch army, seeing that Ney was isolated, launched a massed cavalry assault against the French cavalry. The French gunners deployed and drove back the Allied infantry before the British heavies charged. The French dragoons countercharged and drove the bulk of the British cavalry from the field. Wellington now attacked the French left flank, sending forward massed infantry. In a desperate struggle, the French columns gained the upper hand and drove the English back, with Marshal Ney, Prince of Moskova, directing a well-coordinated and dogged defense. Late in the afternoon, with the rest of the French army approaching, the Anglo-Dutch army withdrew towards Brussels. As the 28th dawn, Prince Blucher advances his Prussians from Ligny to Quatre Bras, finding it abandoned by the French. Meanwhile, on the Mons to Brussels road, the French First Corps force marches to engage the Prince of Orange's First Corps that had withdrawn across country from the Nevelis to Waterloo road the night before. In what ended up an indecisive engagement, General Dillon sent his left flank infantry on a late afternoon assault that saw the British redcoats supported by Dutch cavalry repulse the French columns. Elsewhere on the field, Dillon struggled to get his troops deployed before the fading light put an end to the battle. The campaign would be decided on a different battlefield somewhere else in Belgium. Simultaneously as Dillon was stepping off for Halle, the Emperor and the main French army broke camp and marched north for Brussels. By midday they had encountered the Anglo-Dutch army deployed for battle in front of Brussels. Wellington has taken to his sickbed and Uxbridge has assumed command and has anchored his left on a farm. His first line, composed of infantry supported by guns, had been posted, once again, to the top of a ridge. His cavalry was being held in reserve. Napoleon's battle plan was simple: refuse his left and envelop with his right. With Wellington also having refused his left, Napoleon ordered an intense bombardment against the Anglo-Dutch centre, as he sent the Guard cavalry supported by elements of the Third Corps to threaten the eastern end of the coalition line. As the Anglo-Dutch units turned to face this threat, Napoleon sent in a hammer blow, aimed against the point where the British line had hinged backward. As the Anglo-Dutch centre commenced giving ground, the Highlanders held their ground and several units turned to take the French columns in flank. Further to the east, the French Guard cavalry drove the coalition infantry into square, as the supporting infantry crested the ridge. The Imperial Guard foot artillery was now pushed forward and deployed to pound the gallant Highlanders who, threatened by cavalry, were forced into square. The carnage amongst their ranks was horrific. Uxbridge, with his left flank collapsing, and broken units streaming to the rear, ordered the army's withdrawal, and with this reversal, the campaign was lost.
The Prussians are too late! You understand? Too late! Wellington is beaten! Don't you understand? Wellington is beaten!
The following letter was found in Uxbridge's tent on the evening.
To His Most Royal Majesty, and the Lords at Horse Guards. On the morning of June 20th, I awoke, to find Lord Wellington confined to his bed. His orders were to commence a midday march, to the village of Waterloo, some 10 miles south of Brussels, to bring battle to the forces of Napoleon. At 10 o'clock our scouts reported the French army marching towards us. I therefore took command of the 2nd, the Reserve Corps, in addition to the Cavalry Corps. The Prince of Orange was elsewhere with 1st Corps, waylaid by the French. The battle started at 12:23, with the French manoeuvring across the field, and their batteries opening upon us. Observing the Imperial Guard forming up against us on my left flank, I attempted to secure position by resting my flank on a strong farmhouse. It was 3 p.m. when the French Guard cavalry finally struck against the Dutch infantry. The line dissolved before the French attack. Columns of the Imperial Guard were striking towards our centre, while the rest of the line was under fire from Napoleon's battery. At 5 p.m. the Blues and Royals fled the field in disgrace, leaving little to prevent the French right from striking to the centre of the line. By 7 p.m. the army was broken and flying towards the coast. I organized a hasty rearguard action by the Dutch and German light cavalry, who fortunately had kept their wits about them. Much of the baggage was lost in the flight. I am very sorry to report that Lord Wellington, having stayed in Brussels during the attack, has been captured. I would like to commend the conduct of the 42nd Highlanders, for standing before the onslaught of both cannon fire and columns of French Imperial Guard. Also commendable is the performance of the Allied cavalry in fighting a desperate rearguard action while the household cavalry fled. No communication was had from Prince Blucher or the Prussians since the 16th. Your obedient servant, Henry Paget, 1st Earl of Uxbridge, Acting Commander-in-Chief of your Allied armies in Europe.